This week on Shift Points, I'm gonna clean up some of this wiring that's off of this. So what I've got here is a set of Pittsburgh Automotive. I got these guys at Harbor Freight. It's just for grounds. This section that I have made the constant 12, so now everything is fixed, I hope. What we've decided to do to wire this thing, I told you what I want to do. Instead of straining the circuits that are already in this car, what we're gonna do is add a new additional fuse panel. Got this guy off of Amazon. It's Blue Sea Systems is the brand. It's pretty neat because you can see here we've got a post here that we can run a negative lead off of the battery, a healthy size negative lead, and that's going to give us grounds at all of these positions here. Then we have this stud here that we can choose to either be a constant 12 volts or switch 12 volts, whichever one we want, and then that will power these 6 circuits here. And then there's another stud here that, again, whatever we don't choose this one to be, so this can be either switch or constant as well, and that will power these 6. So that's going to give us 12 additional circuits that we can use. This is going to let me power the subwoofer because the subwoofer needs a constant power, the amplifier needs a constant power, so all of those are going to come off, or those two are going to come off of these studs here, or whichever ones, and then I can go ahead and clean up some of the wires that I have under there. I've got a couple other things for a switch 12 volt source that I'm going to go ahead and run to this panel as well, and that'll clean up some of the wiring that I've done kind of half-heartedly under the dash because I knew that I was going to do something like this in the future. I just didn't know exactly what at the time. So I got this, and that's going to solve that. This thing will accept these different size fuses. Comes with a fuse puller, a few different things like that, and it also has a clear plastic cover. So let's look and see where we're going to mount this thing. So under the hood here, we looked at a couple different positions, one being right here. The problem with this position is if you mount it here, it's going to get really close to the throttle pedal here, so that's no good. I liked that location because these wires here, I wasn't going to end up having to extend them at all. I was going to just be able to just run them straight off of, I believe that's from the amplifier. So that was going to be nice, but just didn't end up working. There is a panel here on the driver's side fender that lets this box fit in here perfectly. That's a lot more accessible if you ever had to change a fuse or do anything like that. It's going to be way more serviceable. I'm going to take some time here when I'm doing my wiring and make sure that it is really neat and clean so it doesn't, hopefully this doesn't stand out too much over here. I don't love this position, but it's just really the only option that we have. You guys have followed this car since we've been working on it for the past year or so. This is a really massive car, and for it to be so big, there is no extra room for anything. When we put the headers on, we had to jack the motor up. Whenever, under the dash, there's no room. The heater box and everything takes up basically the entire under dash area. There's just no room to add anything into these cars at all. It's a real pain. But I think this is it's gonna be super functional. Like I said, not gonna be beautiful, but it's gonna be very functional. And we'll see if we can what we can do to kind of maybe, hopefully, not make this stand out too much there on that inner fender. All right, guys, got that bolted up. Those are just some number 8 socket head cap screws, and just run those bolts through with some lock nuts on the back side of the fender there, and that guy is solidly in place. And that's going to really give us a lot of options on getting all this stuff wired. So now I can start working on these yellow wires. Are all coming from the radio, subwoofer, and the amplifier. I'm going to clean up some of this wiring that's off of this, like for the relay for the electric fans. I can take one of these grounds off. That's the ground for I believe the gauge. I run the gauge ground out here just because I don't really like a body ground. There's a lot more wires here on the car than there was the last time you saw it. So yesterday I started kind of working on this a little bit, wanted to get my mind wrapped around how I was going to do all of this and kind of routing and things like that. So I didn't do much videoing yesterday, but I did start doing some little work, and so let me catch you up. So I went up to O'Reilly's and got some 4-gauge wire. This is recommended by this panel to either feed it with 4 or 6-gauge wire. I went ahead and went with the 4 because I knew there was going to be quite a bit of stuff on this panel, and I wanted to make sure it was fed with some pretty healthy wire and make sure nothing happened there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come off the starter solenoid and drop off of here with my constant positive. And I'm going to come off, straight off the battery here. And I got Dad to make me this brass spacer. I guess that has this cable that'll lay right with the battery cable itself. And these are both going to run down in this direction under the fan across the cross member of the frame there, and then come up here and then feed the panel right there. Now, the other thing that I did is I ordered a 75 amp relay to power my switch 12 volts for the other side of this panel. It's not here yet, it'll be here in a couple days. That relay being there is going to allow me to feed a small gauge wire into that relay, and then that's going to be able to power and be able to handle all of the circuits that I want to run off of this fuse panel on the switch side of that fuse panel. There was just a lot of wires here, and I didn't like it. And because I have this fuse panel now, I've pulled them all out and then run over here, and basically all of them are going to run off of this fuse panel. So this guy is the constant power for the relay for the fans. This guy is the power for the fans themselves. I have to route it over and plug it back in to the plug here on the fans. This is the power wire that runs to the relay for the headlights. So the headlights are the relay for the headlights were tied into the voltage regulator, and when we converted this thing over to the alternator right there, that eliminated that, so I had to tie those wires up into one wire and run them to a constant source. So that's going to be there. So there's a lot of wires here that were run over here or run under the dash that are all going to be able to be shortened, cleaned up, and run to that fuse panel right there. Alright, I was really particular about my routing here. Got these bunched up really nicely. Got them cable tied in place here. Let me get some light over here. I have them routed down and around the front here, and then routed up over here to the fuse panel. And you can see I've already cut this ground to length. And what I'm going to do, and you're thinking, well, Jake, how are you going to put a terminal on that because you're in the car? Well, I got a new tool, and I'm really excited to show you guys. So what I've got here is a set of Pittsburgh Automotive. I got these guys at Harbor Freight. This is a pair of their hydraulic wire crimping tools. And I've already tried it out with those terminals over on that side, and I am really, really glad that I bought these. So I got some of these battery terminals here. They're 4 or 6 gauge wire, and they have a 1/4 inch hole drilled in them here, so you can fit over this stud really nicely. I'm going to go ahead and take some heat shrink and put over this battery cable here, run it down just a little bit, and then I went ahead and started crimping this, and just barely put pressure on it to where it would just hold this terminal in place in the tool. Take and put that over the wire, and then I can go ahead and just keep crimping. Just want to make sure it stays down on the wire good. Down tightly, let the pressure off of it. And you can see right there, I'll zoom in on it, what a nice crimp that is, how clean that is. It is really tight, it's not going to come off. And I was able to take my heat shrink, pull it right up over that connection there, and then I can go ahead and shrink that down. Makes a super nice clean connection, and that's going to go right over that stud just like that, and give us a good ground to this entire fuse panel. And right there is the finished product. You can see it shrunk down. It's super clean. I really, really like these. It makes my wiring so much better, so much cleaner. I want you guys to trust the process because right now it looks like a real mess. But I have everything kind of routed in the general area that I want to route it. And I think once I get everything connected, I've already started to make some connections, you can see there. But like I said, trust the process a little bit because it looks like a mess right now, but I think once I get everything connected and sleeved up, it's gonna look really nice. Now the other thing is I got my Bosch relay today. This is a 75 amp relay. We could run a negative I'm gonna actually use the old circuit from the radio switch. I'm gonna put that positive or negative here, positive here. Then I can have a high output It's actually going to go here. There'll be a constant battery source there, and then an output to the switch side of that fuse panel. That's all going to work together. This guy is going to power those 6 switch circuits there on this side of the fuse panel. So like I said, trust the process a little bit here. I'm going to get these wires shortened and finished up with connectors, mount the relay and run those wires, and then I can sleeve everything, and I really hope this is going to look really nice. But I think I'm right. Just like I said, just trust me. Let's see what we do. Let's see how it turns out here. Well guys, it is a while later. Everything is connected. I haven't cleaned it up yet. I want to run a test on everything, make sure all my stuff is still working before I go in here and button this all up. I did run some really heavy gauge wire off my relay, mounted this up with some 1/4 20 screws right here. That's feeding my switch panel over here. I made a plug that comes off the bottom of it. That goes to what the old radio circuit was, so power and ground, low current going into this relay, coming out as a high current, and that's feeding all this, and it's only on when the switch is on. I remade the fan wire plugs and extended these wires so that all of this runs into this panel. There's the fan relay back there. So basically there's been a complete rewiring of this car. That includes anything that I've added basically, which is the electric fans, all the radio equipment, everything else, the gauge, the tack, everything is through this fuse panel now, and it's all fused, and it should be really safe. Alright, I got all this cleaned up here. All the wires are bundled. I'm really happy with it, with how it turned out, but I thought it might make a lot of sense to talk you through what I did here and exactly why. So the panel I showed you has 3 different sections. We got this section that is just for grounds, this section that I have made the constant 12, and then this 6 fuses here allows us to have a switch 12 volt source to all 6 of these fuses here. So what I did, you guys saw me make the battery cable. This is straight from the battery, negative side. That's giving a good ground to all of these different terminals right here. Then we have a constant 12 volt source right here, also straight from the battery. That's powering these 6 fuses here. And then talk you through the relay. I'm really happy with this because getting a switch source is just kind of difficult sometimes, especially in these old cars like this. And it's basically what started this whole thing, is that I was powering a lot of stuff from one source in here, which was actually the old radio wire that I had tapped into, and I didn't like that. So what I did here is I have this Bosch 75 amp relay. What you do is you run a lead off of actually this plug right here. It gives you your switch 12 and a ground. So that is actually connected to the radio circuit inside the car. So the 2 wires that were coming off that were powering the old factory radio, I extended them and put them here. That's plugged into the back side of this relay. Then you take a source, a big wire like this, coming off of also a constant 12 volt source, and run it to this side of the relay. Then what happens is when you turn the switch on, power and ground comes to those wires inside of the car, and it comes to this, and that powers the coil inside this relay, and then it allows the switch to happen, which turns a constant 12 volt source and switches it over to this lead, which then goes over here and powers the switch 12 volt sources for all of these fuses. This is a 75 amp relay. Right now we only have 5 amps on it, so this is way overkill, but it lets us add anything that we need to on a switch source in the future. I want to bring in here and show the bundling that I did also. That is 1-inch split loom that I put on all of those wires that are coming out of the firewall. That allows us to add any in the future also. So that's run down here. It's all tied together. I went ahead and wrapped my fan relay separately, so my fan relay wires are in a different bundle, smaller bundle. Then we then came over here to this panel and then just took some time, really took some zip ties, got everything tidied up best I could, keep it neat and clean so that there doesn't look like there's just a bunch of wires running off of this. And then kind of clean everything up. Went ahead and put some slit loom on the fan wires also. So all of this should be ready to go. The last thing that I did is hopefully going to make a difference also you guys remember the cover was clear. I went and painted it black so that maybe this whole thing here won't stand out hardly as much. Probably would have been better if it was a little bit more of a flat black instead of the super gloss black, but hopefully that's going to make a difference here. Alright, there's the painted cover. That's all looks, I'm really happy with it. I think it's going to be just right. Alright, last night we drove the Galaxie up to Patton Avenue where we were just doing some cruising, had my son with me, all that stuff. When we left here and made it down to just about a mile down below the house, I noticed that the radio wasn't on for some reason. I don't know why exactly. We pulled over, messed with it, fans came on, the headlights would come on, all of that stuff would happen. Went through, pulled all the fuses, checked them all, they were all good, put them back in. Got back in the car and started it back up. Everything was good. The radio worked, cruised it all the way to Asheville. Everything was fine. Then we stopped to have a little dinner. Got back in the car after dinner. Turned on the headlights to come home. Started down the road. Nothing. Had no power on the fans. Had no power on the radio. Basically, I was losing, appeared to be all the switch power to my panel for some reason. So I've done some investigating this morning, and let me show you kind of what happens here. I turn the switch on, you can see the antenna comes up, which is great. Radio comes on, all that's good. And it's keeping, I changed this to green so that it would match the rest of the dash whenever it came on, whenever the backlights were on. So I know that it's keeping its memory, so that made me realize that it was the switch power. So then if you'll keep an eye on this, I'm going to pull the light switch. As soon as I turn the headlights on, turns the radio off, kills the antenna. So if we come out here under the hood, I've got the headlights on right now. If we take and ground this circuit right here with my battery ground, we know that's a good ground. And we go here to the, what should be on right now, side of the relay, you will see, I'll bring this over here, we have basically no voltage on it. On the other side of the relay where the constant 12 is coming in, you can see we do have good voltage there. The other reason I know that it's the ground is if I come here and I go and stick my lead into the positive side of the low current side of my relay and ground it, right there I do have voltage. Which means that I'm losing the ground to that voltage when I turn the headlight switch on. So there's something about this ground right here that I pulled off of the old radio circuit, the ground for the radio circuit. Something about when you turn the headlights on and it turns the dash lights on is pulling the ground off of that radio line for some reason, I don't know why, and killing it off of here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this ground loose off the low current side of the relay, and I'm going to jump a ground wire from that straight to the battery to make sure that I keep a good constant ground on it. Probably what I should have done from the very beginning, but I just didn't expect this to be an issue, to be honest with you. So I'm going to do that next, jump over here, see if I can keep a good constant ground on it if we continue to keep power on everything. The little bit scary part about this was last night, and luckily I was thinking about it last night, since this relay wasn't working with the headlights at all. That means my fan was not working either, so that did not have any sort of positive switch power to it. I thought this was possible, so I kept way back from Dad, kind of cruised it, put it in neutral and let it cruise down the hills and stuff like that. Kept it cool, kept it way under anything that it would have been. I kept it cooler than what the fans would have needed to be on at any point, so not worried about the motor, but this could have been bad if I hadn't been paying attention and noticed that this was possible. I'm going to call this test Stupid Confidence because I already went ahead and terminated this with the actual crimp that it needed to plug into that plug that I had there, and went ahead and made this like this as well so that it can attach straight here to this ground. So yeah, apparently I'm confident in what I've found here and that this is going to fix all my problems. Radio has power, got power here. Amplifier has power. Starting the headlights on. Turn the headlights on. I haven't lost power. That's a good sign. In here, now let's go out here and check real quick. Turn our multimeter back on. So you'll go straight to ground here. And then this should have 12 volts on it. Yes. This should have 12 volts on it. It does. This should have 12 volts on it. It does. Cool. So now everything is fixed, I hope. I hope that the first initial problem that I had, which was that it didn't work when we first started, was because one of these fuses was not made well. So the only thing I can do is just keep working on it or keep driving it and make sure that it doesn't do it again. I wish there was a better answer, but so far, as long as the headlights aren't on when I've been here, I've had no problem. I've kept power on it. And plus, it went all the way to Asheville last night with no problem, never flickered, never did anything. So, should be good. So, that's where we are. I think this just had a bad ground or a ground that was pulling off of ground for some reason when you turn the headlights on. I'll have to do some research to see if I can figure that one out. Thought about it a while yesterday. I'm really happy with my ground for my switch 12 volts being at the battery like it is now. You guys saw me make that jumper. I'm really happy with that, but I'm a little worried about the quality of the 12 volt source that I got as well, also from that old radio circuit. So what I would like to do is basically eliminate the fuse panel, any sort of fusing, that old wiring for the radio circuit, eliminate that altogether. I just came off of the positive side of the coil. The coil is getting a switch 12 volt source to it, so I have run a line from, I pulled the old ground wire out and I pulled the old positive line out. I ran this line from the positive side of the coil here up and around over to our relay, grounded our battery, grounded this side of the relay, the switch side of the relay to the battery. So we've got a really good clean source on everything now. And now with that, whenever we get in here, everything turns on, amplifier's on, the radio comes on, antenna comes up, so all that's good. And when I pull the headlights on, I don't lose power anywhere. I'm getting a good ground all the way through. Even when I go through the stroke of the lights in the dash, don't have anything, because guess what? It's completely isolated from that altogether. Since I did that, I did go ahead and pull the fuse out of the fuse panel for the radio. I snipped off the wires, but I have the old the heat shrunk connection under there, and pulled the fuse out, so there's no power on that circuit at all, because there's no point in having it. So no point in having a live circuit under there, even if it was plugged off. Don't want that at all. So that is completely eliminated, and it has solved my problem on having this thing turn off whenever you turn the headlights on. Alright guys, that's going to wrap us up for this week. I think that this fuse panel that we put in this Galaxie is really important and something that a lot of people can use. I'm glad that I took the extra time to do that, and I think it turned out really good. And like I said, I hope that this is going to help somebody, because to see an old car get tore up or burned up because you tapped a bunch of wires into the same circuit and it overloaded and stuff like that, that's no good, and nobody wants to see that. So hopefully, like I said, hopefully this helps you out and you can use it or some version of it on your car too. So appreciate you guys for following along. Hit that subscribe button if you liked it. If you learned something, definitely do that. Come back. We try and do something every week that teaches you something, maybe makes things a little more helpful for you. Do that. Follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, all of those. That's always helpful, and you can keep up with everything that we're doing, sometimes even ahead of time. Appreciate you guys for joining. See you next week.